There's a place in the woods called Aspen Ridge because of all the populous trees which grow there. This is where we're from. We are the Popple People. Welcome to our channel. We're glad you stopped by. We'll be doing things a little different here. In this special episode, we wanted to address a comment that came in a while back when we were working on our Shiplap project about pros and cons of different types of siding. So that topic can probably stand by itself, so we decided to do a separate video versus lumping it in with our previous Q&A video. So here is our side-by-siding comparison, looking at shiplap, bevel lap, regular lap siding, and board and batten styles. So let's take a look at each of these separately. We'll start with regular lap siding, which is also called clapboard. These are simply thin boards of uniform thickness. They're placed to overlap each other in installation. Some pros for this style of siding are that it's easy to install and the siding itself is fairly inexpensive, so that makes this one of the cheaper siding options. Also, because it's a straight cut to a desired thickness, it's an easy, quick option to mill it up yourself if you have a sawmill. These boards overlap vertically, which means less likelihood of water leakage because the water tends to run off and doesn't get behind the siding readily. This style of siding is simple, it has clean lines, it's a timeless look that won't go out of style. And because these boards are the same thickness throughout, they'll make for a slightly better insulator than, say, compared to the bevel siding, which we're going to look at here shortly. And then also, lap siding is durable overall, and if you're purchasing it, it's readily available. You can find this stuff almost anywhere. Now, in terms of cons, I would say the main one for lap siding is that if just one piece needs to be repaired, you need to take off all the other pieces leading up to it to get to that one piece because of the overlap. It makes repair of lap siding a bit on the laborious side. Now, it's not so bad if that one piece that needs replacing is the top piece, but if it's a bottom piece on the ground that starts to rot out, which, let's be honest, that's likely where it's going to occur, then you're looking at having to take siding off of a whole wall to get to the single piece that needs replacement. Your workload to do this just increased exponentially. Also, we said board overlap was a pro, but because of that board overlap, dust can accumulate behind the boards, which creates the perfect breeding ground for insects. So this could be another potential for bug damage. Similarly, but less likely, again, if water were to get trapped behind the boards, chance of rot increases because of that overlap. So the overlap thing, it has both good and bad parts to it. Now, to circumvent this issue, you could use treated wood, but that's going to increase your expense up front. And finally, in terms of regular maintenance for this type of lap siding, it's going to need to be caulked at the seams. And again, that's to help keep the moisture and the bugs out. But that's going to be more work overall to maintain this lap siding. So let's compare this to bevel lap siding. So as you can see in the picture on the right, these siding pieces are sort of triangle shaped. They will install much like the regular lap siding with the pieces overlapping each other. And if we look at pros for this style of siding, it includes the fact that it's a very common style, and so it's readily available pretty much anywhere. It gives you just a nice, attractive, classic, traditional look, and that's one of the reasons why this beveled siding is so popular. There are numerous slight variations for beveled siding, so you do have options to choose from if you are purchasing this commercially. Overall, it is a durable siding option that's relatively inexpensive, so it makes it a cost-effective choice. And another option to consider is that it's a bit more lightweight than the traditional lap siding because these bevel boards are thinner on one end. So it makes them just a little bit lighter, a little bit easier to handle, which is a factor you need to consider if you're handling like a 16-foot long piece of this. This type of siding is easy to clean and easy to install. Now, all of that being said, bevel siding is a little bit trickier to mill it yourself. You likely would need to purchase a separate siding attachment for your sawmill, so there would be that additional expense up front. Similar to the clapboard lap siding, there is the possibility that insects can get behind the boards and breed between the boards here too, so making that insect infestation a possibility. And again, if that insect damage isn't cleaned up, it'll start to rot. And the trouble is, it's hard to detect that rot between the boards. Bevel lap siding has kind of a medium moisture resistance. On the one hand, because the siding pattern overlaps, it doesn't readily allow water to get behind it, but that means it has to be installed correctly and sealed at the seams if it's installed for exterior use. This siding does require regular maintenance, similar to that clapboard lap siding, just to preserve the durability and to prevent these rot issues. And also, with the thinner part of these beveled boards, there's less material to rot through before you have problems. So keep that in mind as well. Next, we'll take a look at shiplap. This features notched out areas called rabbets that are cut into both edges of each board. And this then creates an overlapping rabbet joint when shiplap is installed. So let's start with the pros. Thanks to Johanna Gaines, this is one of the most popular options for walls, both interior and as exterior siding. Shiplap has a unique appearance, it's easy to install, and it can be installed horizontally or vertically. You can use it pretty much anywhere, even on ceilings. You really can't go wrong with shiplap. In terms of installation, just make sure your first board is level and you just go from there. It goes up really fast and it gives you a nice finished look. Shiplap is a relatively easy DIY project. You can mill your own boards or you can purchase them from a lumber retailer, and with a dado blade and a table saw, it's easy to make it yourself. Another advantage to shiplap is that if you're using it inside, you can go right over top of existing drywall, wallpaper, old paneling. It's a quick fix to really transform your walls. In terms of exterior applications, shiplap boards form a really snug seal. It was actually originally used in shipbuilding, that's how it got its name, and those overlapping rabbet joints form a watertight barrier. So you'll commonly see shiplap exteriors in areas that are exposed to really harsh and punishing climates, like on ships and seashore homes and coastal regions, and that is designed that way to keep things like wind and water out. Similarly, when you use this type of shiplap indoors, it will generally keep rooms pretty warm and dry. It is an all-around practical choice. Now, some downsides to shiplap are that with the small grooves between the rabbet joints, they create a spot for dust to build up. So shiplap does need to be cleaned if you want to keep that crisp look. Also, if it's not properly installed, it can warp or rot, especially if it's put up in a moisture-prone location such as basements or bathrooms. Considering those grooves again, if you choose to paint shiplap, which is fairly common when it's used indoors, you'll need to use a different painting technique so that you don't fill in the grooves with paint, which would cause a change in the look of it. These grooves need to be painted with a small brush, so it'll take a bit longer to paint if you opt to go that route. One of the pros I mentioned was that shiplap could be installed horizontally or vertically. If you do opt to go vertical, you will likely need to add in either studs or nailers to affix these boards to. So that's going to require a bit of extra planning and building before your shiplap can be installed. And again, bear in mind this possibly would increase the time and cost for this project. And then the last con for shiplap is that if you need to replace one board, it can be challenging. So much like we talked about with the other lap siding options, you may need to disassemble a big portion of your wall to get to that one piece that needs replacing or repair. Finally, let's take a look at board and batten. So this style of siding consists of wider boards and then skinnier strips, which are called the battens, affixed over top the seams between the bigger boards. You can see that arrangement in the picture here. So pros for board and batten include exceptional wind resistance, making this one of the best siding choices in terms of just kind of overall being weather tight. Also, because of how this siding lays out, your board edges don't have to be perfect. It's really easy to hide flaws, imperfections, places you messed up. Board and batten is extremely forgiving. It has a very distinctive, unique look, and it provides a lot of visual texture, which increases your curb appeal. Board and batten is durable, and it's a strong choice with regard to siding longevity. This type of siding can be installed either horizontally or vertically, And because of how it's installed, it's easy to replace individual boards or damaged spots. So unlike all the other options we've talked about, you don't have to take off an entire wall to get to the one rotted board. So this means quicker and easier fixes and repairs and lower overall maintenance costs, especially in terms of the time it'll take to make a repair. Now, if we switch over to the cons for board and batten, the main one is probably the fact that it's going to be a bit more expensive overall compared to the other siding options we've considered in this video. Here you'll have the boards plus the battens. So if you're buying it, materials may cost more simply because there's more pieces. Also, because of that, you're going to need more nails or screws to put it all up. So that's an additional expense as well. And it'll take a bit longer to install because there are so many more pieces to go up. So all of these factor into a slightly higher cost compared to our other lap siding, bevel lap siding, and shiplap. Whether you're paying more in terms of labor to pay somebody else to do this for you, or you'll be paying more in terms of your own sweat equity because your time is worth money too if you're installing it yourself. Any way you look at it, this option will probably cost you a bit more. Another thing to keep in mind regarding the time required to install board and batten is that in order to get a perfectly uniform look, if that is what you're going for, you're going to need to take your time putting this up to get those battens evenly spaced. In the pros, I mentioned that this could go up vertically, but I do have to list this option on the cons list as well because it isn't the most practical option for this type of siding. With running the boards vertically, you may need to install additional nailers so that you have something to properly affix the boards to. Also, board and batten siding is more prone to water seepage behind the boards, especially with a vertical installation, and that tends to be the look most people want and the reason they choose board and batten siding. So, a lot of factors to take into consideration when you're cross-comparing different types of siding. There really isn't a clear winner here since each option has pros and cons. Hopefully you found this side-by-siding comparison helpful in determining which siding option would work best for you. As always, if you have any questions, comments, thoughts, please email us at thepopplepeople, all one word, @gmail.com, or flip-flop a comment below. To wrap up here, we just want to give a shout out to our subscribers. Thank you. We appreciate you. And if you're new here and like this video, please consider subscribing. Keep the questions coming. Our email address is listed here on the screen if you have a question for us, or you can comment below or message us through the chat box on our website. The link to that is in the description below. Thanks so much for watching. We'll catch you next time. Bye.